Hello! And after a slight technical hitch, I believe we are up and running. Apologies for that. Yes, having all the cables connected is definitely a good idea. Yes, indeed. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. I'm Anthony Murphy. This is the Mythical Ireland Library. This is episode number, 234? Wow, can you believe it? I didn't have an accident with a press or anything. Nobody punched me in the face. I have an unexplained bruising above my eye. It's not sore. I didn't do anything. So, just in case anybody comments, yeah, of course the what you call it, the standard reply to that is you should see the other guy. You know, Elaine Dent Lingenfelter is the first one to comment, and of course, if you're watching, please do feel free to join in the chat, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you're on Facebook, share the stream because it all helps. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter is saying hello from hell on earth, where it's 103 Fahrenheit, which is 39 Celsius in Texas. And if that wasn't bad enough, I just found out rental cars have gone up $1,000 for the same number of days, same car. Wow. What's causing that? That is crazy. Joe Butler is saying, yep, I am sorry, I had expensive surprise with rental cars too. Auntie Joe is in the house watching us all the way from good old USA, from Colorado. Still in Croatia, says Anna Liffey. Listening to you from Split. Very, very warm. Talking about closing tourist places, attending the warmest part of the day. Yeah, that's already a thing in parts of Europe, isn't it? Greece, etc. Heat wave across Europe. Not happening in Ireland, where the weather, well, the sun is doing its usual summer evening thing here, but we've had a lot of rain lately, and the temperatures aren't that warm, so I don't know what's going on. We are not seeing the heat waves that the rest of Europe is having. We're having a very average July. In fact, we're having quite a wet July. So some of you would say that's average. 5 years ago, as you saw in last week's episode, we were in the midst of a drought, a prolonged drought. There hadn't been rain in 3 months. Not this year. The crops are getting plenty of watering this year. And Johnny Wilson is also in Dallas, Texas, where the temperature is 102 Fahrenheit. Oh, my goodness me. I hope the air conditioning is working. Lily Shambles is saying to everybody, first click here, then say hi, everyone. Hope you're all well. There you go, encouraging people to get in on the chat. Samantha Healy is watching. Good evening to you. Erica Bow is watching. Hello, Erica. Good afternoon to you. Good to see you again. Anne Scott Doherty is in Southern Oregon, where it's much cooler today, and she's grateful for that. Well, it sounds like there are plenty of other people watching who would be in the same boat if they had those cooler temperatures. It's certainly not exactly very hot here or anything like it, so also very grateful for that. Michael Pike is in the house. Mythical Ireland, Mythical era. Gia glitch tua agus Anton Gia is Gia agus ban Gia glitch. Michal Helen Hirsch Chatter is in the house. Greetings to Anthony, all the Tua. Good afternoon to you, Helen. Thank you for joining us. Brendan Byrne said he'll never complain about rain again. 16 Celsius in Glendalough. Good evening, Anthony. Yeah, so that's the kind of temperature it is here. A lot cooler. Less than half the temperature it is in Texas, for instance. Wayne Bird is in the house. Good evening to you, Wayne. Thanks for joining us. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter, almost $3,000. Sure, look, you'd be better off buying a car, wouldn't you? You'd buy a car for that. Marcus, Irish Technical Thinker, is in the house. Good evening to you. Arvin Gaunt is saying hello, everyone. Good evening from the Boyne Valley to you, Susan Scott. Really looking forward to today's broadcast. It's a steamy but drier northwest Connecticut. Happy to report we're finally drying out after all that rain. Sounds a bit Irish, to be honest. Yeah, but be grateful that you're not sizzling on the grill down there in Texas. Rex Fortenberry is in the house. And he's saying hello from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I imagine it is hot and where I imagine it's also quite humid, if I'm not mistaken. And there's Joe saying hello from Colorado, nearing 100 Fahrenheit today. Much of America is scorching hot, and the same in so many other places. Oh dear. And every occasionally what's happening is when I click on a comment and I display it on the screen, when I unclick it, it goes right back to the first comment. So then I have to scroll down to find where I was. Tom King, after our short black screen episode, Tom was asking, is anybody a coin for the meter? I remember those days. We never had one, thankfully, but I remember being in houses where you had to put, was it a 10 pence coin in the meter? And the electricity would just all go off because somebody had forgotten to put a coin in the meter. Yeah. Hope you're not talking to yourself, Lily Shambles. Well, if I am, that's because I'm having a staff meeting, of course. I recently left my full-time job to concentrate full-time on Mythical Ireland, so I'm now full-time self-employed. So as Tom King always says, if you see me talking to myself, that's just me having a staff meeting. Sean Patter's in the house. A nice evening in South Sligo between the showers. Yeah, it is nice between the showers, definitely, but there's a lot of showers. Hope not too many up Sligo direction, Sean. Yeah. And here we go again. I'm all the way back up to the repeated comments, and now I'm having to scroll down again. Why that happens? Anybody home? Yes, eventually I did. The clock is gone, but no Anthony. Yes. Mariana Dunn is saying hello from Alexandria, Virginia. Back in the early days, I used to ask Mariana, was she in Virginia in County Cavan or Virginia in the USA? Lily Shambles. Oh, good. Gives me time as I forgot my beverage. There you go. You see, there's an advantage to every situation. So, does anybody know any good jokes? Yeah, not me. I know some dad jokes, which are bad jokes, but not some funny ones. Adina Spark says, all are... I'll read it, shall I? Afternoon, Anthony and the Tuatha. Seems our southwest United States are all cooking. 103 Fahrenheit here in New Mexico. Ooh, climb in the icebox and shut the door. No one warned me of this eclipse, says Brendan. Speaking of a blackout at the beginning of the episode. One advantage, says Marianne, is to being sick is to get to watch a live stream with you. Hello, Anthony, from across the pond in North Carolina. Well, all I can say, Marianne, is get well soon from all of us. Hope it's not too bad, and I hope it's a mild illness. Susan Scott wants us to tell a joke. Lexi Erickson is in the house. Good evening from the Boyne Valley. Good afternoon to you. Emily commented that there are technical difficulties. Well, there were, but we're okay now. We're good. Martina is in the house. Good evening, Trenonoa. Martina, hello to you. Susan Scott is making sure that, yep. Is the screen stuck for anyone else? It was indeed, Caitlin. Hope it's fixed now. Laura Puente is in the house. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the stream. Good evening to you, Adrian Beglin. Adrian O'Beglin is joining us. Good evening, Trenonoa Mohara. Who else have we got? Alva Kelly. Banachty, on this fine evening, it's time to relax with a cup of tea and enjoy our old stories. Yes, indeed. Or in my case, a glass of Boyne water. Darkest and quietest Mythflix episode ever. How is everyone? How are you there and back? Yeah. Jacqueline Kelly Adams is saying hello from Oregon, where it's 101 degrees. Wow. So people say that the Pacific Northwest is like Ireland. Yes, but we never get temperatures of 38.3 Celsius, which is what that is in Celsius. Yeah. You'll be glad it's like Ireland most of the rest of the time. Owen is saying hello and sympathy to heatwave-stricken Tuatha. Hope you've got cool drinks and air conditioning and fans going and all of that. Yeah, sounds like price gouging, all right, Elaine, when the same car is costing $1,000 extra to rent for the same amount of time. The full Irish Gary is in the house. Good evening, great and good to another fine day on the sod. It depends on where you were, and it depends on how you describe a fine day. Some people may not agree. Some people who've suffered significant showers. Hello, Anthony and the Mighty Tua from Tom King. So looking forward to Myth and Metal. Not long now. Starting to get ready. Enjoy story time. And of course, that is Myth and Metal, which is on Sunday at the Forge with myself and Tom. So, yeah. That does look weird, doesn't it? It does. I mean, it does look like, somebody gave me a punch. But it's perfect. It's not sore or anything. Brendan Byrne thought it was an episode of Stranger Things. Stranger Things have happened. Barbara is saying, hello, Barbara Murphy. Crazy hot. Already 104 F and expected to be above 110. Oh, refrigerator issues not good in that kind of weather. What's 110 Fahrenheit in Celsius? Find out, shall we? 43.3. Oh. That is crazy hot. 46 in the Sardinia, says Samantha. 119 Fahrenheit, air conditioning not standard. Scary is right. There's tea. 50 bags for the show. That's 50 tea bags. Good evening to you, tea. Tea, everybody? Tea, anyone? One for everyone in the audience, apparently. Well, that's very generous of you. Good luck getting around, everybody, between now and the end of the episode. Kibblehenge is in the house. Good evening, Kibblehenge. You're very welcome. Kathleen Gallagher is in the house. Good evening. And good evening and good every time to Anthony and all. Muggy and close in New York today with temps down over heat and fierce thunderstorms and a tornado warning over the last few. I mean, if it's not hot temperatures, there's other sort of weird and wild weather going on. Not good. Hope you are all keeping cool, keeping safe, and doing your best to get through it. Bonnie Denny is in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. Good afternoon to you, Bonnie, or good evening from the Boyne Valley, where the sun is at times. Oh, it's cloudy again. I shouldn't have spoken. The sun is at times trying to shine through gaps in the clouds. There you go. Hello from Chicago. I'm very sorry that I can't pronounce your name. Ready to learn more about Irish history and lore? Brilliant stuff. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Sean Patter is saying Saturday was St. Swithin's Day. Yes, I saw that. Apparently, if the tradition is if it rains on St. Swithin's Day, then it's going to rain for 40 days afterwards. And indeed, it did rain on St. Swithin's Day. It's like, well, tell us something we don't know. Like, there's going to be rain for 40 days. There has been rain for weeks, Pat Lako Connolly is saying hello from Vermont. We have about 80 Fahrenheit. Oh, that sounds a lot cooler than everybody else. That sounds like the sort of temperature. Yeah, that's 26.6667 to be precise. That's like a warm Irish day. Smoke in the air from fires in California. And we are recovering from floods here in Vermont, but all else as well. My goodness me. It's a tale of woe weather-wise this week, isn't it? And which is why, as Brendan rightly points out, and I'm in that boat. That boat. It's like build an ark. No. I'm in that boat with everyone else who's in reasonably sort of, shall we say, timid weather. We're happy. Sandra Boothroyd is in the house. Good evening to you, Sandra. Welcome to the stream, of course. Lexi just heated her scone, added lemon curd and clotted cream on top. Well, spoil yourself for the episode, why don't you? Sounds lovely. Wow. Mavanway Millward says, evening, Anthony and the two. What happened to your eye? I don't know. I just went for a nap this afternoon. I had a long and busy weekend and didn't get to bed until 2:30 this morning. So I had a bit of a nap this afternoon, and I woke up with this, which I presume is something like a burst vein or something. It's not sore at all. So I presume it's just something that happened while I was sleeping. I wasn't in a row. Didn't punch anyone. Didn't get punched by anyone. Thankfully, I've missed you all the last couple of weeks. Work's been so busy, I keep forgetting the day of the week. But tonight, I'm waving at you across the Irish Sea from Holyhead. I can see the ferry leaving from my room. Wish I could cross over for a special Newgrange tour. Well, you are indeed quite a short distance away. On a clear day, of course, we can see northwest Wales from the eastern Irish coast. Yeah. And of course, you're in Anglesey, which means you're not too far from, what is it? Barclodiad Igauras, or however that's pronounced. Giantess Apronful, another Neolithic monument, probably built by people who knew the builders of Newgrange and the likes of Loughcrew and Fornox and all that, you know. And Mavanui is wearing a jumper, considering myself lucky. Yes, indeed. And he says he didn't do anything. I think he won the fight. If I just... Yeah, I'm very self-conscious of it. I'm very conscious of it now. So I should have got the whole makeup department in before we started. Coda socked his master with a right hook. Anthony's little... Believe it or not, he jumps up on me and leaves bruises on my torso. He's got very powerful legs and paws, and he's very strong. And sometimes when he jumps up on you, he actually leaves. He leaves me with bruises. He leaves all of us with bruises. He's a strong dog. I'll have a cup of peppermint tea with a spoon of honey, please, says Alva. While everybody's getting their orders in now. Tea, are you listening? Ellen Hirsch is saying unhealthy to go out due to Canadian wildfire smoke. Worse in Canada. Wow. And speaking of which, I had a message from our good friend Anne McCallum. Anne is not in Ontario this week. She is in the Catskill Mountains in New York. And she's driving through spectacular scenery. And she's saying that because Wi-Fi is not the greatest, she may not be able to tune in, but she wanted to say hello anyway. So hello to Anne McCallum, who is away from home, and saying hello to everybody from the Catskill Mountains in New York State. Paula Bernard Daffyd is saying, hi, Andy. Who's Andy? Paula, you're very welcome to the live stream. Good evening to you. Helena Breen has joined us. Hello, Helena. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Yes, near me in sunny North Wales, says Sandra. I'm glad to hear the sun is shining somewhere that's not burning. It's not really hot. Yes, a lot of Neolithic remains here, says Mavanui. Very interesting. Sadly, can't make it across to Ireland this time because of work. But I'll be back soon. I reckon the family put some makeup permanent marker on you while you were sleeping. Wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility. And Susan is saying that the Catskills are beautiful. Well, brilliant and good for Anne McCallum, who is hopefully having a great time in New York. And just for any other comments that I have missed, are we streaming on? Well, if Auntie Joe is here, then the answer is yes. We are streaming on the Mythical Ireland community. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Anne or Joe. Very good of you. So I think we will get going. Just to mention one thing. So last week we had a whole array of announcements. There will be no long-winded announcements this week. It's already 8:25. We need to get going. You need your story time. I know how it works. But just to mention that the Fornox tours on Saturday are sold out. Both of them. The Newgrange Farm tours are almost all sold out. There are 4 tickets left for the 1st of August. Tomorrow's tour is sold out. The tour on the 15th of August is sold out, but the tour on the 1st of August, there are still 4 tickets available for. That is the only availability. Everything else is sold out. Excuse me. Oh, So again, just to rewind, long and busy weekend playing music with the brass band. Two of the best brass musicians in the world, Glyn Williams and Helen Williams from the Corey band, were over in Drogheda for the weekend. We had a fabulous time. And we may or may not have done a little bit of socializing. So hence the reason that I'm a little bit... I was not drinking heavily, by the way, but I was home, shall we say, early in the morning. So the only one that's not sold out is Myth and Metal, which is on next Sunday, the 23rd of July. If you're interested, or you know anybody who would be interested, the first event last month was an absolute scream. I've just posted the link, which will give you the full itinerary for the day, and of course the ticket booking. If you're in Ireland on Sunday and you fancy something to do that doesn't involve Gaelic games, I believe Sunday is All Ireland Day. Well, why not pop along to the Forge of the Smooth Road with myself and Tom King for a day of myth and metal. No, not heavy metal. We won't be playing any Metallica, but what we will be doing is telling stories and forging and visiting the Famine House and having basically lots of fun crack, as we say in Ireland. CRAIC, not to be confused with any other type of crack. As I say, the first event last month sold out, and the reviews were, well, fantastic. Some very, very nice comments from the people who were in attendance. So that it all kicks off at 10 a.m. on Sunday in Tom's Forge. The address for that, the air code for that, is on the website, on the page that I've just shared. So yeah, if you fancy coming, book your tickets now. There are still plenty available. So we'll hopefully see you there and then. How long will the tours and events be going on for during the summer? Well, I'm planning to keep doing tours probably into September/October. The Newgrange Farm tours, unfortunately, will finish once the August ones are done. They are over for the year. But there'll be more. I'll be doing Hill of Tara, I'll be doing Douth, I'll be doing Fornox, and a couple of other places. So there'll be plenty. Myth and Metal, we may do again in August, but it depends on demand for this one. I'll be totally brutally honest with you. I'm surprised that ticket sales for this one are slow, given that the last one sold out and we had a capacity crowd and we had a fantastically wonderful day. And as I say, lots of great reviews and feedback afterwards, which is why I'm surprised that this one isn't sold out already. As I say, still plenty of tickets available. So, yeah, we may, myself and Tom, obviously, will discuss all of that between ourselves between now and, after. We'll do an after Sunday when it's finished, an after event recap, and see how we were going on. Anthony was dreaming that he was fighting as a warrior of the Tuatha. You should see the other side, scattered to the four corners of Ireland. Yes, indeed, Brendan. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's great. I'll try and get over September, maybe. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, sure, it's only a short hop across the way, you know. Sure, look, if you're sailing, you know, what is it these days? The fast ferries is a couple of hours, is it? If you're... Oh, yeah, well, I suppose if you're Northwest Wales, I don't know where you'd be flying from. Would it be Manchester or Liverpool? I mean, I know there's lots of flights from Manchester and Liverpool to Ireland. Bristol, of course, if you're in the south of Wales, a lot of people seem to fly from Bristol. But anyway, so this chapter, I was looking at this earlier. So this chapter is called The Decline and Fall of the Gods. And then... basically, we're more than halfway through the book. This is Charles Squire's Celtic Myth and Legend, Poetry and Romance. which we've been reading on and off for the past couple of months. And then a good deal of the rest of the book is about the British gods. So we'll dip in and out of that as time allows. And then there's a chapter at the end called Survivals of Celtic Paganism into Modern Times, which I reckon will be an interesting chapter. But we'll have a look at that maybe a little bit down the line. So is everybody ready? I'll get myself to one of these tours soon, says Mark as well. It would be great to see you and to meet you in the flesh, as it were. No, I'll be getting the ferry, cutting down on flying. Fair enough. No problem at all. Maureen O'Leary is just popping in from the deck at beautiful Cass Lake, Minnesota. Good afternoon to you, and I hope it's a nice day in Minnesota and that it's not too hot, because it does seem to be very hot in other parts of the States and, of course, in other parts of Europe as well. I shall put the reading glasses on. Now, tell me, I'm going to switch something on here. It's just a little light. Just let me know if you hear any interference, like a buzzing or humming sound, because it's powered by USB. That's on. That's off. On. Off. You can see it reflected in my glasses. On. Off. On. Because sometimes when you switch on a USB powered device, it maybe causes interference. If it doesn't, I'll leave it on. And if it does, I'll switch it off. Anyway, are we all ready for a lovely further immersion? Thank you. Rex says it sounds fine. Good. And yep, everybody else saying no difference, not here, and can't tell the difference. Good stuff. So this one is called, again, The Decline and Fall of the Gods. And of course, when we say gods, we're talking about the Tuatha Dé Danann. And by the way, an interesting thing before we do get stuck in is that, there are theories out there that, and again, I refer you to the whole British Israelism thing and my warnings about it. There are websites out there that claim the Tuatha Dé Danann are the tribe of Dan. And what people don't realize who write that sort of nonsense is that the reason the monks called the Tuatha Dé Danann was to distinguish them from the Tuatha Dé, which is the people of God. If they believed that the Tuatha Dé Danann were one of the biblical tribes, do you not think that they would be singing about that from the rooftops? Of course they would. Not at all. No connection. They are the ancient gods of Ireland and therefore considered pagan by the ecclesiastical scribes. In spite, however, of the widespread popularity of the ballads that took the form of dialogues between Oisin and Patrick, certain traditions say that the saint succeeded in converting the hero. Well, of course they do. The same traditions that suggest, for instance, that Erc, the first bishop of Slane, had in fact been converted to Christianity by St. Patrick, and that previously he was one of King Laoghaire MacNeill's chief druids at Tara. And that Laoghaire had said to Erc and his other druids, go to Slane, find out who lit that bloody fire and chop his head off. And they go down with all with their blood up, as it were, and with all the venom and all of that, and are subdued by Patrick, but not just subdued, but converted in some cases. Do you believe it? I don't believe it, said Victor Meldrew. Once upon a time, more than once upon a time. So, in that regard, let us recap. I'm going to go back to the end of the previous chapter to remind you of to remind you of this extraordinary summary of an exchange between Oisin and Patrick, which I was quite moved by, actually, because we have this narrative surviving about conversions, and it's all too convenient that Patrick was able to convert. For instance, a very good example is in that story that we read, I think, in probably 2 episodes, maybe at least 2, Altram Chia Gawvathar, the fosterage of the house of the 2 drinking vessels. Yes, episodes number 83 and 84, in which we found that the first part of the tale had a distinct feeling of being really ancient, relating to the Tuatha Dé Danann and Newgrange, Sheed Broga, and the second part of the tale having this feeling of a Christian monk going off on one and saying, I don't like this tale, it's too full of pagan gods and all that sort of stuff. Let's take one of them away from Newgrange and have her converted to Christianity, and she meets Patrick and then she dies. So let's recap on this, because I was very moved by this, and I think all the rest of you were. So let's just read the end of the previous chapter with regard to the saint and his effort to convert the great hero Oisin. Hang on. Please do not adjust your sets. I'm just adjusting my pillow so that I'm more comfortable. A number of spirited ballads tell how Oisin, which is here spelled Ossian, Ossian, Oisin, stranded in his old age upon earthly soil, unable to help himself or find his own food, is taken by St. Patrick into his house to be converted. The saint paints to him in the brightest colours the heaven which may be his own if he will but repent, and in the darkest the hell in which he tells him his old comrades now lie in anguish. Oisin replies to the saint's arguments, entreaties, and threats in language which is extraordinarily frank. He will not believe that heaven could be closed to the Fenians if they wished to enter it, or that God himself would not be proud to claim friendship with Finn. And if it be not so, what is the use to him of eternal life, where there is no hunting, or wooing fair women, or listening to the songs and tales of bards? No, he will go to the Fenians, whether they sit at the feast or in the fire, and so he dies as he had lived. And I love that. I love that power of saying, well, you know what? It's all too convenient for you to say that Patrick converted him, and that he acquiesced to that conversion, and that somehow he was fine with it. And yeah, don't worry about the fact that all my friends are apparently now baking in the fires of hell. For what sin? For being born in the wrong time and living in the wrong time. And I've always thought that that was one of the many, I would call it discrepancies, but one of the many basically absurd things about Christianity and its views about those who lived in the time before Christ. As I say, you're damned for living in the wrong time. I love the fact that Oisin was man enough to be able to say to Patrick, well, do you know what? Actually, if you're telling me that I can go to heaven and it sounds lovely and all the rest, and you're telling me if I don't recant or repent that I'm going to be doomed to hell, and if you're also telling me that purely by reason of the fact that they lived in the wrong time, that all my friends are now baking eternally in the fires of hell, then you can go to hell, you know? I just love that frankness. And I love that that has survived. I love that this idea of somebody actually saying to St. Patrick, no thanks, buddy. I mean, potentially some of that sounds quite nice, but actually, if it requires, it's like it always, always, always requires these major steps, this proclamation of a faith in somebody that apparently lived a long time ago, uh, of whose life there are no first-hand accounts, and that, if you don't, there's this awful threat of, I mean, whatever about the idea of saying to somebody, if you don't convert to our belief system, you'll die, and you'll be unconscious for the rest of time. The notion of baking and being tortured by constant fire for eternity, for what's in, for not living. I mean, wow. I'm yeah, I'm genuinely moved by Oisín, and what he said, allegedly, to Patrick, you know. Well, thank you, Mr. Churchman. I've listened to all your arguments, and no, no thanks. I'll take my chances, No, he will go to the Fenians, whether they sit at the feast or in the fire. I'll take my chances. Wow. Anyway, let's get moving. Coilche, the other great surviving Fenian, was also represented as having gladly exchanged his pagan lore for the faith and salvation offered him, unlike Oisín. We may see the same influence on foot in the later legends concerning the Red Branch champions. There are Lexi Erickson. There is potentially a very look. I'm not a theologian, definitely not. There are potentially many, many hours of live streams that we could take up discussing that whole thing. Suffice it to say that I have attempted to read St. Augustine's City of God. I have attempted to read Summa Theologica by St. Thomas Aquinas, which is there somewhere in my pile of books. And I go with the argument that Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, divulged, imparted, when he suggested that the likes of St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas were not, in fact, philosophers in the true sense. They were theologians who already had all the answers. There's a predetermined answer. That you can make all these clever arguments. I read 50 pages of City of God, and I had to put it down because I considered it one of the greatest works of sophistry that I had ever come across. You can present all sorts of clever arguments to back up your case, but in the end, you can see right through it. If you're not a believer and you haven't been brainwashed into believing something, when you actually step back from it and look at it dispassionately and objectively, which is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do, then you see this whole notion of a loving God who presents you with a choice. I love you, but depending on how you repay that love, I will either give you admittance to heaven where you live happily forever, or I will burn you in fire for the rest of eternity. And I can't reconcile that. I just can't. And I never will be able to reconcile it, which is why I'm so thrilled to see that somebody from the pagan world, and remember, that word is derogatory and I don't like using it, somebody from the pagan world told Patrick, as I said in that episode, to go fuck yourself. If that is the cost and that is the price, then No thanks, buddy. And I don't mean any offence by saying any of that. None at all is intended. I don't disrespect people for their views, so long as they don't try to shove them down my throat and try to force me to believe something that they believe because they think that they need to proselytize. Whew, that got heavy. Let's move swiftly on. So Coillte, just to let you know, Coillte is that character who talks with St. Patrick in the story that's known as Achalovna Shanorach, the colloquy of the ancients. So apparently he gladly exchanged his pagan lore for the faith and salvation offered him, unlike Oisin. We may see the same influence on foot in the later legends concerning the Red Branch champions. Oh, hang on, I need to mark the finishing point here. Okay, let me just mark that so I don't go beyond it. It was the policy of the first Christianizers of Ireland to describe the loved heroes of their still half-heathen flocks as having handed in their submission to the new creed. Yeah, of course it was. It was a great work of propaganda by the early scribes, you know. The tales about Conchobar and Cuchulainn were amended to prove that those very pagan personages had been miraculously brought to accept the gospel at the last. And if you think about it, it is a leap of faith. If you pardon the pun, it is a leap of faith to believe that these, and pagan is a terrible word. Pagan is a word that was never used by any of these people in terms of their own beliefs. Here's a people who had their own beliefs and their own way of life. And along came these, evangelists and proselytizers. Along came the saints and the converters, and who basically apparently arrived into Ireland and just sat down with some of these kings and chiefs and, heroes and warriors and said, listen, let me tell you about Jesus. And if you believe in him, you can have eternal life. And that a load of those heroes and warriors and kings just said, oh yeah, sure, we'll go with that. Fair enough. Grand. I'll rubber stamp that. And brilliant. Sure, look, there's me access to heaven guaranteed. Very odd. An entirely new story told how the latter hero, that is Cuchulainn, was raised from the dead by St. Patrick that he might bear witness of the truth of Christianity to Lera II, King of Ireland, which he did with such fervour and eloquence that the sceptical monarch was convinced. The story contained in Laur na Hira, the Book of the Dun Cow, is called The Phantom Chariot. It has been translated by Mr. O'Byrne Crow and is included in Miss Hull's Cuchulainn Saga. That's Eleanor Hull. Apparently Cuchulainn was brought back from the dead by Patrick to convince King Lera II, a High King of Ireland, look, if Cuchulainn is saying it, then, it has to be true. Daring attempts were also made to change the Tuatha Dé Danann from pagan gods into Christian saints. But these were by no means so profitable as the policy pursued towards the more human-seeming heroes. With one of them alone was success immediate and brilliant. Bridget, the goddess of fire, poetry, and the hearth, is famous today as Saint Bridget or Bride. Most popular of all the Irish saints, she can still be easily recognised as the daughter of the Dagda. Her Christian attributes, almost all connected with fire, attest her pagan origin. She was born at sunrise. A house in which she dwelt blazed into a flame which reached to heaven. A pillar of fire rose from her head when she took the veil, and her breath gave new life to the dead. As with the British goddess Sul, worshipped at Bath, who the first century Latin writer Solinus tells us, quote, ruled over the boiling springs, and at her altar there flamed a perpetual fire which never whitened into ashes but hardened into a stony mass, unquote. The sacred flame on her shrine at Kildare was never allowed to go out. Of course, that sacred flame was the sacred flame of Saint Bridget, not a goddess Bridget. But what he's saying here, and what a lot of commentators have said, is that they're one and the same. So God does not force people into hell. God gives people a free will. People freely choose hell over God. Well, that's if you believe in hell, Maureen. I mean, to be quite frank, like, you know, that's the problem with this whole proselytization that happens. It's very black or white. It's like, yeah, you choose it. It's like, again, to me, that is a statement of sophistry. That's a clever argument to uphold beliefs. You know, you have to believe it in the first place. You know, and I like the fact that Oisin said, well, you know, that's a kind of really strange way of trying to get somebody to come round to your point of view, is to basically say, well, if you accept, you'll have eternal life. But if you don't, you'll burn for eternity, you know? No. Never worked for me, and never will. I think I'll do an Oisin on this. I think I'll take my chances. And there's free will for you, by the way. It was extinguished once in the 13th century. This is the flame of Bridget at Kildare, but was relighted and burnt with undying glow until the suppression of the monasteries by Henry VIII. Of course, that was in the 1530s. This sacred fire might not be breathed on by the impure human breath. For 19 nights it was tended by her nuns, but on the 20th night it was left untouched and kept itself alight miraculously. With so little of her essential character and ritual changed, it is small wonder that the half-pagan, half-Christian Irish gladly accepted the new saint instead of the old goddess. Doubtless, a careful examination of Irish hagiology would result in the discovery of many other saints whose names and attributes might render them suspect of previous careers as pagan gods. I like that saying. Previous careers. Yeah. In my former career, I was one of the Tuatha Dé Danann. You know? Peter Kennedy has joined us from Balbriggan. Don't worry about being late. No, Brown. Any Myth and Metal events scheduled for August? Not yet. And I was just saying earlier, Peter, that the ticket sales for Sunday's event are slow, inexplicably slow, because June's Myth and Metal was completely sold out, and it was a ball, and the reaction was brilliant on social media. Lots of people saying fantastic, highly recommended, and ticket sales for the Sunday one are quite slow. So it will depend on how Sunday goes, but hopefully there will be one, you know. Wayne Bird has to go and pick up his son. That's okay, Wayne. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you'll catch up on the rest of the episode at some point, either this evening or tomorrow. But their acceptation was not sufficiently general to do away with the need of other means of counteracting the still living influence of the Gaelic pantheon. Therefore, a fresh school of euhemerists arose to prove that the gods were never even saints, but merely worldly men who had once lived and ruled in Ireland. In Éireann, as it says here. Learned monks worked hard to construct a history of Ireland from the flood downwards. Mr. Eugene O'Curry has compiled from the various pedigrees they elaborated and inserted into the books of Ballymote, Lecan and Leinster, an amazing genealogy which shows how not merely the Tuatha Dé Danann, but also the Firvulugs, the Fomors, the Milesians, and the races of Partholon and Nemed were descended from Noah. Japheth, the patriarch's son, was the father of Magog, from whom came two lines, the first being the Milesians, while the second branched out into all the other races. Having once worked the gods first into universal history and then into the history of Ireland, it was an easy matter to supply them with dates of birth and death, local habitations, and places of burial. We are told with precision exactly how long Nuadu, the Dagda, Lu, and the others reigned at Tara. The barrows by the Boyne, as in what we call the monuments, the passage tombs, the She, provided them with comfortable tombs. Their enemies, the Fomors, became real invaders who were beaten in real battles. Thus, it was thought to make plain prose of their divinities. It is only fair, however, to these early humorists to say that they have their modern disciples. There are many writers of recognized authority upon their subjects who, in dealing with the history of Ireland or the composition of the British race, claim to find real peoples in the tribes mentioned in Gaelic myth. Yeah, that is a tendency, of course, but it's complicated, shall we say, and there may be real races somewhere in those stories. Unfortunately, the only point they agree upon is the accepted one, that the Milesians were Aryan Celts. And of course, as always with Squire, when he uses the word Aryan, he doesn't mean some pure race, as in the Nazi terminology. He's referring here to Indo-European. They are divided upon the question of the Firvulugs, in some whom see the pre-Aryan tribes, while others, led astray by the name, regard them as Belgic Gauls, and over the really mythological races they run wild. In the Tuatha Dé Danann are variously found Gaels, Picts, Danes, Scandinavians, Ligurians, and Finns, while the Fomors rest under the superstition of having been Iberians, Moors, Romans, Finns, Goths, or Teutons. As for the people of Partholon and Nemed, they have been explained as men of the Paleolithic age. This chaos of opinion was fortunately avoided by the native annalists, who had no particular views upon the question of race, except that everybody came from Spain. Of course, there were dissenters from this prevailing mania for humorization. As late as, of course, humorization means the turning or the transformation of deities into ordinary mortals, usually long after the time in which they're alleged to have reigned. As late as the 10th century, a poet called Yochi O'Flynn, writing of the Tuatha Dé Danann, at first seems to hesitate whether to ascribe humanity or divinity to them, and at last frankly avows their godhead. In his poem, preserved in the Book of Ballymote, he says, "Though they came to learned Éireann, buoyant, adventurous ships, no man in creation knew whether they were of the earth or of the sky. If they were diabolical demons, they came from that woeful expulsion i.e., they were thrown out of heaven. If they were of a race of tribes and nations, if they were human, they were of the race of Beothach. He then enumerates them in due succession and ends by declaring, though I have treated of these deities in their order, yet I have not adored them. He's careful to keep a distance, you know. He's like, yeah, he's clearly intrigued by them, you know. And of course, this is the eternal difficulty in terms of the ecclesiastical scribes who are writing the stories of Irish pagan mythology down, is that it challenged them and their faith. And so this is like a standard answer, you know, is to say, well, actually, they weren't gods at all. They were just ordinary mortals, you know. Now, the curious thing is that the Tuatha Dé Danann may well have been. Let's consider the possibility. The Tuatha Dé Danann may well originally have been humans who were later deified. So the euhemerization, again, returning them to their possible mortal origins. So somebody's asking, Donna Ferrer, good evening, good afternoon to you. What year, again, this book? A year of original publication was 1912. This is I believe it's late 1990s, 1998 facsimile reprint. First published in 1912 as Celtic Myth and Legend, Poetry and Romance by the Gresham Company of London. One may surmise, I'm just making sure I haven't missed any. Yes. Good. One may surmise with probability that the common people agreed rather with the poet than the monk. Pious men in monasteries might write what they liked, but mere laymen would not be easily persuaded that their cherished gods had never been anything more than men like themselves. Probably they said little, but acted in secret according to their inherited ideas. Let it be granted for the sake of peace that Govnew was only a man. Nonetheless, his name was known to be uncommonly effective in an incantation. Of course, Govnew being the smith, Angawa, Gobon Sayer, etc., many variants of his name. This applied equally to Dian Kecht, the healer, the physician of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and invocations to both of them are contained in some verses, which an 8th century Irish monk wrote on the margin of a manuscript still preserved in St. Gall in Switzerland. Some prescriptions of Dian Kecht's have come down to us, but it must be admitted that they hardly differ from those current among ordinary medieval physicians. Perhaps after that unfortunate spilling of the herbs that grew out of Miach's body, he had to fall back upon empirical research. He invented a porridge for, quote, the relief of ailments of the body, as cold, phlegm, throat cats, and the presence of living things in the body, as worms, unquote. It was compounded of hazel buds, dandelion, chickweed, sorrel, and oatmeal, and was to be taken every morning and evening. He also prescribed against the effects of witchcraft and the 14 diseases of the stomach. Govnew, Desiree Riley is in the house. Good afternoon. Hope all is well. And hello, of course, to Amadeus. Govnew, in addition to his original character as the divine smith and sorcerer, gained a third reputation among the Irish as a great builder and bridge maker. As such, he is known as the Gobán Saor, that is, Govnew the architect, and marvellous tales current all over Ireland attest his prowess. And here is a quote. Men called him Gobán Saor, and many a tale yet lingers in the byways of the land, of how he cleft the rock or down the vale led the bright river childlike in his hand, of how on giant ships he spread great sail, and many marvels else by him first planned, writes a poem of modern Ireland, and that is Thomas D'Arcy McGee, and the poem is the Gobán Saor. Probably pronounced the Gobán Saor because it's Gobhan. Especially were the round towers attributed to him, and the Christian clerics appropriated his popularity by describing him as having been the designer of their churches, which is fascinating. Here they're borrowing from pagan lore to incorporate that into their own stories. He used, according to legend, to wander over the country, clad like the Greek Hephaestus, whom he resembles, in working dress, seeking commissions and adventures. His works remain in the cathedrals and churches of Ireland, and with regard to his adventures, many strange legends are still, or were until very recently, current upon the lips of old people in remote parts of Ireland. Wow. So, in just over a century ago, there were still people, as I say, in remote parts of Ireland who were telling tales of the Gobán Saor. Just checking. Barbara Cohn is in the house from Homer, Alaska. Thank you. A great way to spend my lunch break and start the work week. Brilliant. Great to see you, Barbara. And a great pleasure to see you in Ireland recently. What time of the day is it in Alaska? How far behind us are you? I know the West Coast, as in Seattle, is 8 hours behind. So you must be further behind still. I know I probably asked you that before. Great to see you. Is it frozen or just me, says Adrian. I hope it's just you and that it's not a general problem. Kevon Morcha, that's another Murphy in the house. Sláinte, you're very welcome to the live stream. Yes, Lily is asking, was that throat cats? And indeed it was. Cold phlegm throat cats. And the presence of living things in the body as worms. Yeah, throat cats. Anybody shed any light on that? I haven't a clue what that means. Is it like fur balls, you know? 12:08 now, says Barbara. Oh, so you're 9 hours behind because it's 21:09 here now. 9:09 p.m. Some of these are, as might have been expected, nothing more than half-understood recollections of the ancient mythology. In them appear as characters others of the old, yet not quite forgotten gods, Lugh, Manannán, and Balor, names still remembered as those of long past druids, heroes, and kings of Ireland in the misty olden time. One or two of them are worth retelling. Mr. William Larmini, collecting folk tales in Achill Island, took one from the lips of an aged peasant, which tells in its confused way what might be almost called the central incident of Gaelic mythology. The mysterious birth of the sun god from demoniac parentage and his eventual slaying of his grandfather when he came of full age. And that is from Larminie, Lorminie, and apparently it's a book called West Irish Folktales. Actually, do you know what? I don't think I have it. It would be an interesting one, I think, to add. It is available as a PDF or a HTML version, apparently on Project Gutenberg. The Gloss Goblin. That's the magic cow stolen by Balor. Govon, the architect, and his son, young Govon, runs the tale. Were sent for by Balor of the Blows to build him a palace. They built it so well that Balor decided never to let them leave his kingdom alive, for fear that they should build another one equally good for someone else. I wonder what Tom King makes of all that. Yeah. I'm going to hire this guy. He's the best in the business. And when he finishes designing my luxury pad, I'm going to kill him because I don't want him going designing any other luxury pads for anyone else that will rival my luxury pad. You don't have a copy? I don't think so. I don't believe I have it in my library. No, I know, shocking. I know, right? Vicky Wallace-Southall is in the house. Oh, I'm late, just a little bit. We're nearly finished. Vicky, it's great to see you. And if Evan and Chile are watching, a very, very big hello to you. And good evening from the Boyne Valley. Yes, his work is attributed to Holy Cross Abbey. His grave was desecrated recently. It's near where the Derry na Flan chalice was found. I presume we're talking about the Gobán Saor here. Didn't know that they had identified a grave or a burial place for him. That's fascinating, if that's who you're talking about. Please forgive me if it's not. He therefore had all the scaffolding removed from round the palace while they were still on the top, with the intention of leaving them up there to die of hunger. But when they discovered this, they began to destroy the roof, so that Balor was obliged to let them come down. Same story is told about the round towers, where the Gobán Saor builds the round tower and the scaffolding is taken away, and because he's stranded on top, he says, well, if you don't let me down, I'm going to find my way down by basically throwing all the stones off and, starting at the top, gradually, destroying the tower and coming down to ground level. Not, clever, but, kind of obvious too. That's what you would do. He nonetheless refused to allow them return to Ireland. So I presume this palace or luxury pad must have been on the island of Tory. The crafty Govon, however, had his plan ready. He told Balor that the injury that had been done to the palace roof could not be repaired without special tools, which he had left behind him at home. Balor declined to let either old Govon or young Govon go back to fetch them, but he offered to send his own son. Govon gave Balor's son directions for the journey. He was to travel until he came to a house with a stack of corn at the door. Entering it, he would find a woman with one hand and a child with one eye. Balor's son found the house and asked the woman for the tools. She expected him, for it had been arranged between Govon and his wife that what should be done if Balor refused to let them return. Clever. They had it all figured out beforehand. They had a plan. She took Balor's son to a huge chest and told him that the tools were at the bottom of it, so far down that she could not reach them, and that he must get into the chest and pick them up himself. But as soon as he was safely inside, she shut the lid on him, telling him that he would have to stay there until his father allowed old Govon and young Govon to come home with their pay. And she sent the same message to Balor himself. I wonder if this is related to the whole idea of fosterage, the fostering of king's sons, I'll foster your sons and you foster mine, which means that we're never going to attack each other, It's sort of like a guarantee that nothing untoward will happen. There was an exchange of prisoners, Balor giving the two Govons their pay and a ship to take them home, and Govon's wife releasing Balor's son. But before the two builders went, Balor asked them whom he should now employ to repair his palace. Old Govon told him that, next to himself, there was no workman in Ireland better than one Gavageen Go. When Govon got back to Ireland, he sent Gavageen Go to Balor, but he gave him a piece of advice: to accept as pay only one thing, Balor's grey cow, which would fill 20 barrels at one milking. Balor agreed to this, but when he gave the cow to Gavageen Go to take back with him to Ireland, he omitted to include her byre rope, which was the only thing that would keep her from returning to her original owner. The grey cow gave so much trouble to Gavageen Go by her straying that he was obliged to hire military champions to watch her during the day and bring her safely home at night. The bargain made was that Gavageen Go should forge the champion a sword for his pay, but that if he lost the cow, his life was to be forfeited. At last, a certain warrior called Cian was unlucky enough to let the cow escape. He followed her tracks down to the seashore and right to the edge of the waves, and there he lost them altogether. He was tearing his hair in his perplexity when he saw a man rowing a coracle. The man, who was no other than Manannán mac Lir, came in close to the shore and asked what was the matter. Cian told him, "What would you give to anyone who would take you to the place where the grey cow is?" asked Manannán. "I have nothing to give," replied Cian. "All I ask," said Manannán, "is half of whatever you gain before you come back." Cian agreed to that willingly enough, and Manannán told him to get into the coracle. In the wink of an eye, he had landed him in Balor's kingdom, the realm of the cold, where they roast no meat, but eat their food raw. Cian was not used to this diet, so he lit himself a fire and began to cook some food. Balor saw the fire and came down to it, and he was so pleased that he appointed Cian to be his fire maker and cook. Now, Balor had a daughter. How long is this going to go on? Because I'm reaching... Yeah, this is going to go on too long. I'm going to have to leave this till next week. You're going to be on a cliff edge here. A cliffhanger, folks. Now, Balor had a daughter of whom a druid had prophesied that she would someday bear a son who would kill his grandfather. Therefore, like Acrisius in Greek legend, he shut her up in a tower, guarded by women, and allowed her to see no man but himself. One day, Cian saw Balor go to the tower. He waited until he had come back, and then went to explore. He had the gift of opening locked doors and shutting them again after him. When he got inside, he lit a fire, and this novelty so delighted Balor's daughter that she invited him to visit her again. After this, in the Achill Islanders' quaint phrase, quote, "He was never coming there until a child happened to her," unquote. Balor's daughter gave the baby to Cian to take away. She also gave him the byre rope which belonged to the grey cow. And that is where I'm going to leave it for now. Leave you all in total and utter suspense until next week's episode. That occasionally happens. It happens in TV series where you're left on a what's it called, a cliffhanger. You're left wondering and pondering what is going to happen next. Well, tune in next week to find out. That's one way of getting you all to come back again. But thank you indeed to everybody for tuning in this evening. Kathleen Gallagher says it's a moving tale. Yes, indeed. Of course, we have our version of the Glasgow myth on this side of the sea, on this side of Ireland, involving the Rockabill Islands. So maybe I'll tell you about that next week too. I probably have told you already, but some of you will have forgotten, and that's perfectly okay. Gemma McGowan says, trust me to sign in just as you mentioned, Manannán. Trust you to sign in just as we're finishing. But hello and good evening, Gemma, and I hope you're well. And to you and the family. And of course, to mention that as soon as we're finished, the episode will be available to rewatch, and you'll get an explanation for this, which is not a result of a scrap or an incident involving a door or anything like that. It seems to be a burst blood vessel or something, not causing me any pain or discomfort whatsoever. Burr Whelan is also late, turning up late, yes, or coming home late. But that's okay. Hello to you, Burr. At least we get to say hello to you guys before we actually finish down. I can hardly keep up with the drama of this, says Donna. I know. Sherlock, isn't that the wonderful thing about the tales? Full of drama, you know. Yes, indeed. Trojan horse hiding, says Michael Trott. Yes. The synchronicity is off the scale sometimes, says Alva. Yes, Peter Kennedy. Sounds like an Irish version of the Daedalus, Icarus, and King Minos myth. We'll have to watch the replay, says Vicky. That's perfectly okay. And as I said, we're waving at Vicky and Evan and Chili as well. Alva was originally looking for videos about the Ogham alphabet when she found this channel. I'm still here. Because of all the synchronicity and Anthony's storytelling. Synchronicity is always telling you something, isn't it? It's like saying, yep, yeah, you're on the right path here. Something that you've done clicks, you know, or a lot of things click. Well, at least I got to listen to a few minutes live. We'll rewatch later. Have a good week, everybody. You too, Desiree. Hope it is a great one. Thanks for tuning in. Anthony, if you have an eye patch next week, we shall call you Balor. Hopefully it will be gone in a day or two, you know. Been working in the field. Brilliant. Sounds very, almost quaint, actually. Almost like a postcard picture of the Boyne Valley, you know. Yep, and one final mention before we hit the hay, as they say. Don't forget, Myth and Metal is on this Sunday. Please, if you're interested, or even if you're not able to attend, please send the link on to a friend. There are loads of tickets still available. I'm sorry to say, I thought it'd be sold out at this stage. But myself and Tom are looking forward to inviting everybody to the Forge on Sunday. Hopefully the weather will play ball. Thankfully, the banqueting table is all under shelter these days. So if it does rain, we'll be grand. We'll be perfectly fine. But it's always nice to have a nice day. So hopefully I'll see some of you, or loads of you, at the Forge on Sunday. Maybe some of you have booked tickets for Saturday's Fornox tours. I may see you there as well. Or maybe even one or two of you have tickets for tomorrow's Newgrange Farm Archaeological Park tour, which begins at 12:30 tomorrow. Might see you then. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you all next week. And the sun is still in hiding here, although there are clear patches in the sky. There are plenty of clouds as well. But anyway, hope everybody stays cool. I know it's hot in various places in the States and around the world. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you all next week. Ikawak Kulasov, Slán go fóill, agus